Hello, and welcome to the Wine Enthusiast Podcast, your serving of drinks culture and the people who drive it. I'm Jordan Kaplan here at Wine Enthusiast. Well, it's almost the 4th of July, and this year is a little extra special because it is the United States' 250th birthday. So in honor of this huge milestone, we're bringing a little red, white, and blue onto the show. Our guest today is Bennett Rea, whom you may know from his wildly popular internet series, Cookin with Congress, where Bennett has been documenting eating like presidents and first ladies and sharing recipes from across the entire political spectrum. While politics in general will forever remain a hot-button issue, there is something about boiling these larger-than-life figures down to their diet that makes them feel a lot more accessible and the topic a little less divisive. Join Bennett and I as we walk through some of the good, bad, and downright strange. Bennett, I am so glad to have you on today's episode. Happy 250th anniversary of America almost.
Thanks, Jordan. Happy to be here. And yes, we're almost to the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America, and I've been very busy.
I can imagine this would be a really busy time for you.
A lot of 200-year-old recipes have made their way into my home as of recent weeks, yes.
Terrifying. All right, so I want to get into it. How and why did you end up doing Cooking with Congress? What brought you here?
So I was up in Washington State with my wife years ago. I guess almost 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago, and we were visiting her grandmother, who's actually since passed. And out of nowhere, her grandma pulls this cookbook from her shelves, and it's the 1989 South Dakota Centennial Cookbook. She was originally from South Dakota, and she just handed it to me and said, "I think you would find this neat." And I opened it up, and it's full of weird, antiquated recipes, and they're all from politicians. They're from like state senators, representatives, the governor, lieutenant governor at the time, and even the president of the United States, Ronald Reagan, and George Herbert Walker Bush had submitted their own personal recipes to this cookbook, and all of them were horrifying. And so I thought it was so funny. I'd always been obsessed with presidents since I was like 6 years old. I really wanted to be the president of the United States and a chef at the same time. And so it just spoke to me in this strange way where I had to start recreating these recipes. And so I started doing them for my own pleasure back then, one-offs here and there. Started with wine jelly and diabetic cucumber salad and happy ham, all from that cookbook. And then I started just building the collection. And now I've got maybe 70 cookbooks just like that, all with recipes from politicians. And the show really kind of took off in video form in 2023.
Do you think the series helps humanize politicians, or does the sheer weirdness of all of it make them still feel alien?
I think it humanizes them. I think politicians and especially certain presidents have this mythic, legendary status in our minds. They're like the founding fathers. They're on our money or whatever else. And the series helps bring them down to size just by watching me do, I guess, the most ordinary thing that everyone relates to, which is food. And even when it's weird, I think people connect to that too, because who doesn't have a strange eating habit? Like I eat my cereal out of a mug with no spoon. Like that's kind of strange, right? Like, is
Yeah.
that any stranger than some of the presidents or politicians of the past? I think everyone's got those little quirks and habits. And so they can feel seen by Teddy Roosevelt being like a coffee hound because they're like, yeah, I drink like 10 to 12 cups a day, right? So I think it's really fun to see yourself in the presidents. And even if you don't, there's something interesting about the perspective, right? So I guarantee 50 years from now, people will look back and be like, you were eating bee pollen? Like, why did you choke down protein popcorn? Like, what were you doing in that time period? The exact same way that we look at mayonnaise jello today.
We'll just have to explain protein maxing to them, unfortunately.
Kids, gather round. I want to tell you about the great fiber maxing that happened after the protein maxing.
I'm so scared of that. So, in your extensive study, I'm curious as to some of the oddities that you've come across. Like, it could be a president, it could be any figure that you've done, but who had the strangest eating habits?
I think the strangest eating habits for me are the people who don't enjoy food. Calvin Coolidge and Richard Nixon come to mind. Gerald Ford also. He was quoted as saying, "Sleep and food are unnecessary and overrated." And I mean, I understood that because Gerald Ford was drinking a martini with, a pile of cottage cheese and raw onion on top, and Richard Nixon was enjoying cottage cheese with ketchup all over it. So I believe them that they did not enjoy food. They didn't really think about it that much. But it's so foreign to the way that I appreciate and enjoy life, and I think a lot of others do. Same with Calvin Coolidge, just kind of like nibbling all day, little snacks just for fuel. That idea of food as fuel or food as a barrier to the rest of your day is so like antithetical to the way that I understand life. And so to me, those are the strangest kind of eating habits.
Cottage cheese, and I might get some flack for this. That's one of those things I think people are pretending to like. And I'm sorry if you do like it, but I can't get past it.
I like cottage cheese. I think there's just ways to treat it well and with respect, and there's ways to completely destroy it by topping it with just the worst imaginable condiments.
Okay. Let's move on. So we've got strange eating habits. I need to know about the booze. Is there a boozier president, political figure? Who's drinking on the job?
Oh, a lot of them actually. There's this fascinating history where you go back to the 1770s, the founding fathers era, and they were drinking significantly more alcohol than we are today. Like the past six presidents that we've had, I think one drank really at all. Like Barack Obama, very, very occasionally would have, he liked beer, brewed some honey ale in the White House. But otherwise, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, George W. Bush, even Bill Clinton really didn't drink, or they didn't drink at all. Going back to George Washington and Adams and Jefferson, they were drinking, and they were drinking kind of throughout the day. Adams started his day with a tankard of hard cider. That was like, his orange juice essentially was was hard cider.
What kind of proof would that be?
So only it'd be like a session today. So
Okay.
maybe like 2 to 3%.
Okay.
But so yeah, it's like sparkling water, right? To some people. But still a tankard of hard cider, which there's conflicting reports of exactly how much. Some say a tankard, some say it was like 2 to 3 ounces. But 3 ounces, 16 ounces of hard cider, to start the day off, a bit rare nowadays, right? In the presidency and maybe beyond. Washington drank a good bit as well. Jefferson had his temperate, at the time, temperate 3 to 4 glasses of wine at dinner, but that was it. I should note that glass sizes were different too. And so when it says 3 to 4 glasses, that's probably like maybe two or a glass and a half in today's standards. Glass sizes increase
Okay.
significantly over time.
I was gonna say
Um,
4 glasses is not anything to turn your nose up at, but smaller makes sense.
Basically, yeah, almost a bottle, right? But it
Yeah.
would be they were like 3-ounce glasses versus today's 5-ounce glasses, so a little bit of inflation there. But there's a number of different presidents who drank too much, unfortunately, for kind of dark reasons. There's presidents who drank very jovially and seemed to just kind of love to party, and there's others that were even kind of professional mixologists in their spare time.
Oh, who is the mixologist?
That was FDR. So after
Wow.
the day's meetings were done, all the business at 5:30, he would go into a glorified closet in the White House with a few of his closest friends in politics there, 5 to 6 of the boys, so to speak, and they would go and have what was called the children's hour. And the children's hour was just FDR whipping up cocktails and drinking and talking and kind of talking trash on all of their political enemies. While Eleanor Roosevelt stayed far away from this, she kind of didn't really approve of it that much. But he would be mixing up weird versions of martinis. There's this drink called the Haitian libation that was rum and orange juice and brown sugar. And he really fancied himself a home bartender, even if sometimes his contemporaries said that the cocktails tasted like garbage.
I mean, if he was just whipping up whatever. Was there anyone who had a particularly interesting drink of choice with dinner or in the morning?
With dinner or in the morning, I like that because there's two that I'm thinking of. So I I love a Ramos Gin Fizz. It's a fantastic cocktail if you've ever had it before. It takes a really long time to make. The originals took like 10 to 12 minutes. You pass it around the bar because you're shaking it for so long to get this
Mhm.
big, creamy, foamy top to it. And this is apparently a favorite, along with martinis, of Herbert Hoover, which is interesting because he was president during Prohibition. And so he really shouldn't have been drinking martinis or Ramos Gin Fizzes, but he would sneak off to the Belgian embassy to have his cocktails because it was legal to have it on non-US soil, essentially, right? So I love that story that he would be sneaking off to embassies to have like legal cocktails during Prohibition. And then I also think of Harry Truman. I spent a day eating like Harry Truman. I've spent a day eating like almost all of the US presidents so far. And Harry Truman's day started off with a shot of bourbon before anything else. A little walk in the morning and a shot of bourbon. And I got to tell you, if I'm gonna have a shot of bourbon, I'd kinda rather have it in the morning than at night. You know, at night, it disrupts your sleep. I'm in my 30s, so it disrupts my sleep now. In the morning, it's just sorta like a hard start. It's not enough to feel it. It's just an ounce, so you're not, like, hammered, at 9 o'clock in the morning. Um, Maybe it'll replace some people's morning coffee.
I mean, it's gotta be invigorating.
It'll put some pep in your step for sure. Yeah. I was feeling okay I think it was 8 a.m. I had it, and then I had to make breakfast and go on a little walk, and I was like, I'm okay right now. This is feeling kind of fun.
Can you expand more on the Prohibition era thing? Because that is incredibly interesting to me. So, Prohibition started when and ended when? Do you know?
Off the top of my head, I'm gonna say it was 1919, I believe. And then it ended in 33. I'll have to fact check me on that one. Yeah, I believe it was, the late 19 teens and ended in the 30s. And so there were four presidents who went through Prohibition. And three out of the four didn't really play by the rules. They had their sneaky ways of drinking during that time. Calvin Coolidge did play by the rules. Maybe that's again why I'm just like not relating to him that much. Like rule follower, didn't really enjoy food. I don't know. But Harding had his poker games. So like Warren G. Harding was present during Prohibition, had sneaky poker games. So they would smoke cigars and have whiskey all night, a lot of beer. Hoover, of course, sneaking off to the Belgian embassy, and then FDR publicly, wasn't drinking, of course, and publicly was not eating or dining on great food during the Great Depression. But privately, he was having those cocktails. Although, to be fair, privately, he was eating pretty terrible food as well.
Is that like a preference thing or because of the depression?
No, no, it was actually so Eleanor Roosevelt very wisely said, we cannot be seen to be having the lobster dinners that Hoover was having before it. Hoover ate incredibly well. It was one of my favorite days of eating was Hoover's because he was eating the most expensive foods, 7-course meals. And Eleanor said, we can't do that while the country is starving because of, for moral reasons and also because of optics. So she had very basic meals served to FDR and herself in that time period, to the point where he complained constantly to Eleanor, to his wife, saying like, please, like tell Henrietta, who headed up the kitchen, tell Henrietta Nesbitt to stop serving the same chicken dish 7 days in a row. I'm going to go insane. And then Eleanor would just send a little note to Henrietta and say, just keep serving it. It's fine. Don't listen to him.
No, Ella.
I know. Amazing back and forth where she was really in charge of the household in that way.
She really stood on principle. I mean, you gotta
Mhm.
admire that.
Very much.
So we talked about you doing your days of eating, which is pretty much the nucleus of the series. I would love to hear who you really enjoyed eating as and who you might not try again.
I there's a few I won't try again for pure stamina reasons. I think I really enjoyed the foods of Theodore Roosevelt and William Taft. However, Theodore Roosevelt drank about a gallon of coffee a day, which
No.
is enough for some heart palpitations, or at least some like psychotic episodes for some people. And William Taft ate, upwards of 8,000 calories per day. So unless I am switching gears and gonna start training to become like an NFL linebacker in my late 30s, I don't think I'm gonna eat another like 8,000 calorie day again. I hope because that was intense. I I've never experienced anything like that before.
What made up the 8,000 calories?
There were, I think, 9 different types of meat, ranging from, if you count fish, there's salmon, there's turkey, there's veal, there's chicken, there's possum, there's pork, bacon, etc. Beef. Oh, of course, steaks. So he would start his day with a 12-ounce steak after his doctor told him he had to stop eating 24-ounce steaks for
Mm.
breakfast. So a ton of meat, a lot of lovely desserts throughout the day after both, lunch and dinner. Um, Not a big drinker at all, and absolutely no eggs. He did not like eggs.
Huh. Funny line. Wonder what
Yeah,
that was.
right. That's the thing you won't have. He'll eat possum, but not eggs. Okay.
So you said that there were 2 that you enjoyed. What sort of meals were included there?
Mm. So one of my favorites, for Taft, there's this rich lobster stew, and it was referenced to, and there were some descriptions of it in books that I found, but I really enjoyed making it because I kind of worked on the recipe itself and perfected it over the course of months and months and months. It ended up being years, really. And it's gorgeous, like yellow. It's popping with tomatoes. It's got saffron in there. It's rich, but not too rich. I absolutely adore that rich lobster stew. And then for Teddy Roosevelt, he has this bison ribeye with wild dandelion greens. So I got to like go out and do as Teddy would have done, which is to go forage my own greens, which, I mean, I forage them from like the backyard, but still,
That counts.
it felt cool.
So are there some that you've taken into your, like, everyday rotation? Or not every day, but your, like, repertoire? Like, if you're having a dinner party, would you pull out any of these?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a few that I've really enjoyed. So um I've made the Ramos Gin Fizz for friends before, even though it takes a long time. I've kind of found a workaround, so it maybe only takes like 4 to 7 minutes instead of 12 minutes. So that's a cocktail that I've definitely made because you really can't order it in bars without being a bit of a jerk, I think, because you're just forcing a bartender to be like, "Hey, can you spend the next 12 minutes on one drink?" That's so I would never do that. So I'll serve it to people in my house for sure. And then I had a lot of people over and I made hoe cakes and flannel cakes. So I did like a big pancake breakfast, and the flannel cakes were a Ulysses S. Grant recipe. And the
Mm.
key there is whipping your egg whites, and they are absolutely fluffy and fantastic, not too sweet. And then hoe cakes were a George Washington favorite, cornmeal base and a little more dense. Drizzle it with honey on top. Mount Vernon, someone from Mount Vernon, a fan of the show of Cooking with Congress, sent me like honey from Mount Vernon, so I got to top it with the official Mount Vernon honey, which is really cool, and that was a fun one to serve to friends too.
That sounds incredible. I didn't realize there were so many different iterations of cakes, but mean, I guess that makes
Oh,
sense.
yeah,
Modern
there's
pancake.
Johnny cakes, flannel cakes. I just had buckwheat cakes for a day of eating like Abigail Adams, which is a fun recipe that I got to just kind of make up, using period authentic, ingredients.
Yeah, are there some recipes that you cannot trace like, maybe they don't exist anymore, and do you kinda have to improvise sometimes?
Yeah, there's a lot of recipes where it requires a bit of translation. Old cookbooks, especially if you like open up I have it like right next to me as we're talking, the Martha Washington Book of Cookery, but it is written in like an old English that is so difficult to understand. Like they spell words differently too. Like orange is spelled Orringe, and so there's there's kind of like a translation issue before you even get to the fact that they would leave out steps in recipes. So it's less um, it's less difficult to find a specific recipe than it is to make the recipe work without a lot of testing and modernization. That's the difficult part because they'll leave out steps. They'll assume you know to put salt, pepper, or baking soda into a specific recipe. They'll say, hey, bake this bread in a warm oven for a moderate amount of time. And you're just supposed to kind of know what that means. So that's the real difficulty, I think, in older recipes is their reliance on non-standardized instructions.
Right. What's warm to them in an oven? How hot can the oven actually get? But even still, the modernization, some of it's a little bit unavoidable too because food tastes different now, I would imagine. I wonder if that changes the outcome of some of these recipes.
Definitely. I mean, I think about this in terms of eggs. So, like, eggs are larger today than they were then. The kind of perfect ratio I've found is like 5 to 6. So, like, you know, 6 old eggs equals 5 modern day eggs because they've gotten different in size. I think about it with apples a lot too. Apples, there were so many different varieties of apples, especially in the East Coast, in the 1700s, 1800s. And we basically boiled it down to like a dozen that you can get in stores. So I try really hard to work with farms when I can. There's a couple out here. I live in California, and there's farms nearby that are growing these like heritage varieties of apples that tastes more like the apples that we would have eaten back in 1800. And so I'll do those if I'm doing like a malt cider or an apple pie or a apple pandowdy. I'll get in contact with and see if I can get a big bushel of the old stuff. And they're so much more rustic looking and more complex than what we can find in stores.
Wow, I really appreciate the diligence on that. That's so you're trying to get it as authentic as you possibly can.
Yeah, I really am. I think like there's in the beginning when I would start to make these, I was like, oh great, I'll like do a mac and cheese from 1800, and I would just like get a box of macaroni and do it. But that's not how they were doing it, right? They were like hand rolling the macaroni and cutting it themselves. And so I've gotten a lot better over the years, I think, at being authentic and learning more about it. I've just learned so much from this process too.
So, is there anyone in the test kitchen with you? Who else gets to try these creations?
So, well, all my neighbors all the time. I made a wedding cake from LBJ's daughter. Her wedding happened while he was president, so I just made it very, very recently. It's an old hidden recipe, like in the archives of the LBJ library that they shared with me. And I made the cake. It's a whole cake. It's a massive cake that like me and my daughter and wife don't want to eat a whole cake. So we're like, all right, neighbors, we're forcing cake on you again. So I am always bringing it to our lovely neighbors and friends. Otherwise, my daughter and my wife are hilariously pescatarians, so they don't eat meat. So they're not really into the boiled tongue days that I have to.
Oof. That's a tough sell, even for non-pescatarians, I feel like.
I know. Even people are like, "Oh yeah, I'm a full carnivore." Except that, no, actually, no, I'm not. I renounce.
Do we have any pescatarian presidents?
George Washington, oddly enough, he wasn't a pescatarian, but he did not eat a ton of meat because fish was soft and he had very bad teeth. And so he would usually prefer fish over other meats. Or if it was going to be meat, he would have it sliced very, very thin, cooked until it was extremely tender. If he was going to eat tongue, it would be very tender, not tough. But he was a big fish guy. Thomas Jefferson, meats were sort of an accompaniment to vegetables, and John Adams as well. So it really, in the early days of the founding fathers, we started off with more alcohol, more vegetables, less meat, more fish.
Interesting. Feels like some evolution of where we might get to again. I'm
I
sure everything's
I think
cyclical.
so, right? Yeah, maybe in 100 years when we're celebrating the 350th, we'll all be talking about how weird it was that, we ate meat as, like, a main dish in the 2000s or whatever.
So I know we've kind of danced around it, but I have to know what the worst thing you've tried is.
Wow, the worst thing I've tried is a gelatin recipe. It's not associated with a president, it's associated with a former congressman, Erlen Hedrick. It is lime jello, lemon jello, mayonnaise, cottage cheese, pineapple, pimentos, and then you freeze it, and you're supposed to eat it frozen. Now, I don't know if you've ever eaten frozen cottage cheese or frozen mayonnaise or frozen jello, but the texture is like teeth on a chalkboard. The flavor is bad. The flavor is bad enough to run away from it, but the texture alone, that it doesn't thaw, you're just supposed to kind of bite into it frozen. It is the least pleasant feeling I've ever had on my face. I I can barely like it's giving me chills talking about it right now. There's the hair on the back of my neck is standing up. And the flavor, I got one bite through, biting into a frozen curd of cottage cheese covered in mayonnaise, and that was it. That's all I did. One bite, done.
That is horrifying. What how was that a family recipe? How
Mhm.
does one come up with this?
Yes, yes. So many of these 1950s and 60s and 70s recipes are family recipes. It would be their proudest recipe. And that's what I thought was so funny about that congressional cookbook was that these are the politicians' proudest recipes. This is the best that they have to offer. And it's frozen mayonnaise jello. Like that's coming from the most powerful people in the country. It's just unfathomable.
Well, I know Jello did start to have a big moment probably around, what, the 1950s? When did they start making Jello salads?
Yes. Well, they started making Jello salads from the box mix, yeah, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It got really popular. Before that, it was unobtainable for the masses. Gelatin is very time intensive to make yourself because you're boiling bones, getting collagen out of like hooves and stuff like that. So it was really only for people who had a lot of money. So aspics were what were considered like early Jello, quote unquote. But that would be, beef or chicken or fish suspended with vegetables into a gelatin mold. And then eventually, people figured out that you can make them sweet and make a dessert out of them. They've been doing that a little bit prior. Like there were wine jellies that were popular in the 1700s and early 1800s. Thomas Jefferson has a wine jelly recipe, and a few other presidents do. But it wasn't, yeah, until the 40s where they really leaned into the sweetness factor, or and actually sweetened the gelatin powder itself.
Aha. That is interesting because I always wondered where that big Midwest, like, Jello salad, fruit, and whatever else floating in there, where how that came to be.
Yeah, all a status symbol basically, right? They're like, "Hey, this thing that only rich people could afford, now you can serve it at home through the power of gelatin." I also have theories that like people just were smoking way too many cigarettes and so their taste buds were blown out. So
It's not
that
a bad
and
theory.
yeah, exactly. Like that and then maybe some like passive aggressive housewives who were doing all the cooking. Their husbands get home after like a day of working and possible philandering and they get like a shrimp jello salad. Like small vengeance.
Here's your mayonnaise Jello. So, I think it's interesting because I feel like you can learn a lot about a person by what they eat, obviously not everything, but are there people that you feel like like, gained some insight on or learned a lot about when going through their diet?
I think every single president, every single politician, every single person I've eaten like in the like my I have another series called Eating Like America where it's people from all over the country who are not famous or powerful. And they submit their diets and they eat just like ordinary folks. And I learn something every single time. That's kind of the point of the process for me going beyond the recipes was to have an experiential engagement with these like public figures and these people. And at the end of the day, like I recap how I feel. So it's not a data driven series where it's like, this is how much money I spent, these are the calories and whatever else. It's all about like, well, how did I feel after this day? And so I think every single politician I've eaten like has given me those days have given me insight. If I had to pick one that gave me the most insight, it probably was William Taft, not just because I had like a semi-religious experience from eating that much and then fasting for 25 hours afterwards, just out of I just wasn't hungry for a full day. But I think I understood how stressful it must have felt to be him, you know? And as someone who, like, leans on the side of stress eating versus stress not eating, I, like, felt a lot of kinship with William Taft, and I was like, "Oh, wow, like, he's just like me in some of my, like, darker moments," right? Like, the most powerful person in the country can still stress eat and feel caged by the office, you know? He lost 70 pounds, after he left office because the job was just so hard on him.
Interesting. So it does sort of humanize these figures in a way.
Yeah, I think it humanizes them. It brings them down to it brings them down to size. From it takes them from this mythic status down to an understandable person. And I think that there's nothing. I, I've caught. I've had questions about whether that's a good thing to humanize presidents over time. But I think that there's no danger ever in seeing a person's humanity. I think it can only make them less scary if you're scared by them, and lend more honesty to history too. Like I'd rather see the full scope of who Thomas Jefferson was or Ulysses S. Grant was than just the person on the coin.
Mhm. and what's being presented. I mean, that's something I've never considered. Okay, so I want to get into a fun question, and I think I might actually have you pair this with wine or a cocktail if you'd like. But if you had to do a 3-course meal from your archive, so appetizer, entree, and dessert, what are we going with?
Appetizer, entree, and dessert. Okay. Appetizer is going to be, and I will pair it with something. I'll pair it with a cocktail for each. Why not? We'll do a full tasting menu. Um, Appetizer, I think I'll go with this. It's so ridiculously rich. It's a hot lobster salad. It is the most decadent food I have tried on the show. It is lobsters, Madeira, truffles, heavy
Ooh.
cream, and egg yolks all mixed together to form this like beautiful completely extravagant little, and you don't need much, maybe a half cup is plenty, salad that William McKinley enjoyed in the Gilded Age. So it's a total Gilded Age recipe, and absolutely the most expensive one that I've made on the show, because you know how much a fresh truffle costs, plus lobster, plus a good bottle of Madeira, which is worth buying. It was like more than $100 spent on one recipe. So I'll do that for the appetizer alongside I think actually a glass of Madeira. So Madeira was like the champagne of the founding fathers era. They Jefferson drank it pretty much, every night. Washington was famed for his Madeira and love of porter as well. And a really good medium dry Madeira is like I'm trying to bring Madeira and back into the modern era. I want a Madeira Renaissance because I think it's delicious and underappreciated as like this beautiful fortified wine with lots of complexity, and it's a very American spirit, even though it's from Portugal. So I'd have a little 2-ounce glass of Madeira with that stew, with that salad.
That
For an
sounds incredible, honestly.
and then we can stop there, and then that's
Yeah.
enough richness for the whole night. um, the entree, I will. I think I'll go with the. Okay, the entree. I'm gonna go with something a little wild. It's gonna combine the alcohol and the food, but it's drunken bread. A recipe associated with Thomas Jefferson, and it's an entire loaf of sourdough or other French bread filled with wine, and,
Okay.
and then with the best mac and cheese you've ever had shoved inside of it, like a Panera bread bowl, but done well, and not for people under 21.
Well, they're so creative. We could learn to be a little bit more creative. I'm like,
I know. They invented the bread bowl years before, the big chains got to it. So delicious filling, combines the food and the booze, which I love. And then for dessert, I think I will go with black raspberry pandowdy. So a pandowdy is sort of like a pie where at the very end you break up the top of the crust to kind of dowdy it up, so to speak. Apple pandowdy, very popular back in the day. Black raspberry pandowdy was a Franklin Pierce favorite. Black raspberries are my favorite fruit of all time. Can't find them where I am, so I have to get them like shipped in if I really care about it. They're just the perfect berry to me, and the pandowdy, having it broken up, it's rustic, it's sweet, it's purple and different, and I love that dessert. And in Franklin Pierce's honor, I guess next to it, I'd just have a shot of whiskey.
were black raspberries something that were more accessible then?
On the East Coast, they're still pretty accessible. So I
Okay.
used to live in Pennsylvania, and we would just have them growing in our backyard sometimes.
Interesting.
And especially in like New England, New Hampshire, Maine, etc., like blueberries, raspberries, black raspberries are more common. Out here, you have to go all the way up to Oregon to find them really in any numbers.
Interesting. I don't maybe this I'm a Southern gal. I've never heard of a black raspberry
You've never heard
before.
of a black raspberry?
No,
Oh, wow, yeah. You've gotta get a black raspberry. Some black raspberry ice cream at the very least made with real black raspberries. That's not even come across your plate yet?
no, I have tried a lot of
Wow.
blue raspberry items though, but I don't know what fruit that's native to.
Ah, the elusive blue raspberry. They're still hunting for it. They're still trying to find the elusive blue raspberry in the Northeast.
They make a great slushie, I'll tell you what.
They do.
All right, so I want to hear we how many series do we have going on right now? What do you have coming up that you're excited about?
Oh my God. Well, I have a lot coming up in terms of the 250th, collaborations with different presidential libraries, eating like, various presidents. I've only got 10 more to go in terms of all the US presidents to publish, at least. I've eaten like most of them already. So they can look forward to some more obscure ones coming up soon for the big presidential nerds out there who are just pining for James Buchanan and William Henry Harrison. Those will come up.
James Buchanan was, for whatever reason, my favorite because I had to do a second grade report on him.
Yes, yes.
No,
I feel like that was one of those national things that they had us do. It was like you have to pick a state at some point in elementary school to do a report on a state, and you have to do a report on a president. So people really remember the presidents that they got. Harding, that was my guy. I was like, he's 29th president of the United States. I still remember that stuff, right? So I'm really excited about that coming up. And this is not the most public knowledge yet, but I am hard at work on a cookbook right now, and so I am very excited to be into the kind of photography period soon enough, and be prepping for that. I'll make a big announcement and won't be able to stop me from talking about it at some point. But I'm just loving that whole process. It's thrilling and exciting, and the hardest I've ever worked on anything.
I'm overly excited to see that.
Thank you.
Are we thinking of any like new series, like eating like dictators, or like?
Ooh, I've opened eating like dictators would be interesting. Something I thought of because I started to find all these like strange old medicines from the
Mm,
presidents, and like I think I covered. I don't want to get too graphic here, but I covered the soup that was administered to James Garfield to save his life, but not
mhm.
administered the way that most soup is imbibed. There are so many strange medical inventions and ideas and tips from Martha Washington and the Jefferson era, but even up into like the 1800s and 1900s. I've started to think about like a series on that. So like the
Don't
medicines.
don't put leeches on you.
Should I not take mercury? Really? Oh, I mean,
Please, no leechings. Um, well, that
there's
is incredible.
that, and then this winter, I think I'm gonna do a Minnesota hot dish-a-thon. That used to be something that the representatives would do. The Minnesota congressional representatives. I wanted to do it like this spring, but it's no one wants to eat a hot dish in hot weather. And so once it gets to wintertime, I think I'll start bulk buying tater tots and rating those hot dishes from all the Minnesotans who've served. So that's just a few. I'm always like just chasing my curiosity and whatever looks fun and interesting to me, but big plans for the near future.
That all sounds extremely fun. Who knows? You might even end up with your own peanut farm, a la Jimmy Carter.
Oh, that would be. I would look. We've got chickens. We've got 3 chickens right now. We'll start there and see how big we can go.
Okay, Bennett, this was amazing. I look forward to the last 10 presidents. Very excited for everything you have coming up, and thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Jordan. This is a lovely conversation. I hope tomorrow you wake up and you consider that Harry Truman hard start to the day. Let me know how it goes.
You know what? You'll be the first person I reach out to after I try it. Thank you, Bennett.
Thanks.
I hope everyone listening has a better idea of what can be done in the wide world of Jell-O and mushy breads. But mostly I want to thank Bennett for his time and insight. You can check out his content on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. You can email us your comments and questions at podcast@wineenthusiast.com. Remember, you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to your favorite shows. You can also go to wineenthusiast.com/podcast for more episodes and transcripts. I'm Jordan Kaplan. Thanks for listening.